Getting comfortable giving constructive feedback to your employees in a way that's going to build them up instead of break them down is a gift that you can give your employees. But many people shy away from giving constructive feedback because they're afraid of the backlash or how it might make people feel. In this week's episode of The Happy Leader, I'm going to talk to you about why it's so important to give your employees constructive feedback, tips for how you can do that in a way that's going to land in a non-judgmental and very supportive way, and I'm going to share a model to help you with this. You'll also hear some stories and a little surprise role play. Welcome to The Happy Leader. I'm Amy Sanchez, executive coach to some of the most innovative leaders and teams in Silicon Valley. I'll share stories and tips to help you navigate the most common leadership challenges so you can amplify what matters most: happiness. I once worked with a client. Let's call her Monique. Monique was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar, well-known nonprofit company. She had a number of talents, as you can imagine, for somebody who had ascended to her position. However, her leadership team was in gridlock. There was constant conflict among them. Gossiping was common. Anytime they had to collaborate to get to a common outcome or a common goal, she had to be pulled in to play referee and help them get across the finish line. As you can imagine, this was really draining for Monique, and it required way too much of her limited time. As I dug deeper to try to understand why this behavior was happening among her leadership team, I discovered something that was really critical that goes directly to what we're going to be talking about today. I came to discover that Monique was really uncomfortable with conflict and big emotions. And as a result, she had trouble delivering difficult feedback. When you're leading a team who is in constant conflict, difficult and direct feedback is greatly needed. When you're leading a team who is doing really well and collaborating nicely, difficult and direct feedback is greatly needed. The point I'm trying to make is, in any situation, when you are the leader of a team or the leader of direct reports, it's incredibly important to get comfortable giving direct and constructive feedback. Now, if this makes you feel just icky thinking about giving direct feedback, rest assured that you're not alone. Monique isn't the only one who is a talented leader but has trouble delivering difficult feedback. This is probably the one leadership skill that every leader needs to do, but very few feel comfortable with it. I struggle with it at times too. It's just hard as humans to give people difficult and direct feedback. Sometimes it's just easier not to rock the boat. And also, what if delivering the difficult feedback backfires? In this episode, I'll share with you why it's more risky not to deliver the feedback, how to deliver the feedback using a tried and true feedback delivery model, and tips to help you get better at delivering difficult feedback. Just like with anything, with practice and persistence, this is a skill that you can master over time. So it no longer keeps you up at night and keeps your team from performing at their very best. Let's get right to the meat of this topic. If you feel uncomfortable delivering difficult feedback, you are not alone. In fact, according to an article from HBR, Harvard Business Review, 69% of managers said that they're often uncomfortable communicating with their employees. As we dig deeper into this data, and the question was asked, how many of you feel uncomfortable giving direct feedback to your employees when you think the employee might respond negatively to the feedback? It was over a third of the group who took the survey. So this is not a skill that is easy for a lot of people. When we're feeling uncomfortable, most of us will find a way to get distracted or change the subject or avoid the topic entirely. But here's the thing. When we skip an opportunity to provide much needed feedback to our direct reports, we miss the opportunity to help people understand the gap between their intention and perspective. We also miss a chance to be an honest sounding board in a life full of people tiptoeing around the truth because we all want to be liked. We miss an opportunity to help somebody develop, improve, and spend all the time that they're investing in work in a way that's actually going to help them get where they want to go. Delivering difficult feedback it's like giving somebody a flashlight when they're walking through a dark tunnel so that they can see the pitfalls in front of them. In short, when we see a gap that's directly tied to the success of an individual that we manage, and it can be supported by clear, undisputed facts, and we're in the position to control the career destiny of that individual, we are doing them a disservice if we choose to stay safe and don't deliver much needed feedback. Now that we've explored why it's important to give feedback, let's talk about the best way to deliver the feedback. Now, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, anytime I get a model that's been used in the past and it's tried and true and it's proven, that helps me feel more comfortable about approaching sticky or icky situations. I'm going to give you a feedback model today that's really can help you frame up your feedback. I'm also going to give you some tips to ensure that you're giving feedback in a way that conforms to all the best practices as supported by the latest research out there. So some of these are going to be obvious, some maybe not so obvious. Let me start with number 1. Make sure that the feedback is timely. Giving constructive feedback weeks after an event has transpired makes it very difficult for everyone to remember what happened. We are moving at the speed of light. So make sure that when you deliver feedback, that it comes at least within a week of the indiscretion. Don't wait until a performance review to give crucial feedback. Nothing you tell them during the performance review should be a surprise. Number 2. Deliver this feedback during a regular one-on-one or set up specific time to talk about it. The reason why I recommend doing it during a one-on-one is because you're not going to put them on the spot or create anxiety for them by saying, hey, we need to talk about what happens. Now, there are times when you're going to need to do that if it's a large indiscretion and they know that something went wrong. But a really good way to do this is, since we've talked in previous episodes about doing regular one-on-ones with your employees, use that meeting as an opportunity to give valuable, constructive feedback. Be careful not to always give constructive feedback. You're going to want to hit a 5-to-1 ratio. 5 positive remarks to 1 constructive remark. This is sort of the magic ratio that we see in psychology that helps people feel appreciated and seen, but also helps your constructive message land with the right ratio at place. If you want to learn more about those one-on-one conversations, check out episode 18 of the podcast or YouTube, where I go straight into giving you advice about having those one-on-one conversations in those meetings. Number 3, deliver this feedback in person if possible. The second best option is video chat with the camera on. You don't want to deliver constructive feedback via text, email, or via voicemail. Eye contact is really crucial for this conversation. And it also allows for a two-way dialogue when you do it via a video call or a live chat. Number 4, mentally prepare yourself to show up with the right energy. What do I mean by that? During this conversation, you'll want to be focused on helping the person. You'll want to be controlled and you'll want to be respectful. If you are not in the right mind space to deliver that experience, reschedule your meeting. Number 5, are you ready for the framework? There are lots and lots and lots out there. So if you already have one that works for you, great. The one that I like to use because it's so easy to understand is the SBI model: situation, behavior, impact. Here's how that breaks down. The situation is the undisputed events or the facts of what was happening at the time. What setting were you in and when? Behavior is the fact-based behavior that you observed. Now, this isn't your interpretation. This isn't your judgment. This isn't you trying to leap to conclusions about the behavior that you saw. It is solely describing the behavior that you observed. Now, this is an important distinction because you really want to come to this person with feedback that is non-emotional and non-judgmental. Finally, impact. What was the impact of the behavior that they observed? Connect the dots for them. When they went in that meeting and said something that ruffled feathers, what was the impact that they may not have seen at the end? So you want to highlight that in this conversation as well, so they really understand why you're having this conversation. So that's the model. S, situation. B, behavior. I, impact. Got that? Okay, I'm going to layer on a little bit more. After you describe the behavior, check in with them to ask for their input and acknowledge and validate their reply. This is a really important part of this because you don't want this to be a one-way conversation. That's where it lays flat and you have no way to check in to understand where they were coming from and get their side of the story. You want to create time and space for that so that they feel validated and they feel heard. You also might learn something really valuable from that conversation. After you share the impact, SBI, last part of the model, state exactly the change that you would like to see in the future and ask for their input as to how feasible this change is for them. Then you're going to establish a time to follow up with them on the agreed upon change. If this is all new to you, the best way to really absorb this is to hear a model of what this might sound like. So I'm going to share one with you today. Greco, when we were in the marketing launch meeting this Tuesday, you interrupted Sally 3 times. After the 3rd time, she shut down and stopped contributing. Why did you interrupt Sally so many times?
Sally's suggestions were steering us in the wrong direction. I've done this before, and I've seen the approach she was advocating for, and I know it leads to a confusing and unsuccessful launch. That's why I kept interrupting.
I can understand why you would want to steer the team in the right direction, and I really appreciate the value of your past experience. I think the group could very much benefit from what you have to share. However, the way in which you chose to do that led Sally to feel like you didn't value her contributions. After the meeting, Sally's boss approached me and showed concern for your approach, and she questioned if you were the right person to participate in the launch. I know that you are the right person for the launch team, but I'd like to see you take a different approach next time you disagree with someone so you don't alienate other members of the team. What's a different way that you can highlight your concerns without interrupting a teammate?
I guess, instead of interrupting Sally, I could share my previous experience so we could have an active conversation around our different suggestions instead of shutting her down.
That sounds like a much more constructive approach and one that will lead to a much more collaborative conversation. Let's revisit this conversation in a couple of weeks and see how this new approach has worked for you.
Thanks, boss. I appreciate your input and interest in my development. I didn't realize how much I'd upset Sally. I will set some time up to speak with her so I can mend fences.
That's it. You'll notice that this approach is supportive, it's non-judgmental, and it allows for a two-way conversation. That way your employee feels seen and heard, not judged or disrespected, and you still are helping to acknowledge their value. We are trying to lift people up, not tear people down. You'll also want to approach this with the assurance that you're on their team and you want to see them succeed. Delivering constructive feedback is just one instrument in an orchestra of instruments that together create the right melody. You'll also want to have those regular one-on-ones, set clear goals and expectations so your teammates know exactly what success looks like, and shoot for a 5-to-1 ratio. 5 pieces of positive feedback to 1 piece of negative or constructive feedback. Don't forget about those positive feedbacks. They're really, really easy to do, but often forgotten. Try and practice this feedback model in a low-stakes situation until you start to build your confidence and you're ready to roll this out more broadly. Here's a little bonus for you. This feedback model can also work with kids, friends, partners, and other loved ones. Because best practices around human motivation and behavior don't change when we exit the workplace, luckily for you, when you start to build this muscle and get really comfortable giving constructive feedback, it's one that you can apply to all parts of your life. Until next time, stay happy out there. Thanks for listening to The Happy Leader. If you would like more information about me, Amy Sanchez, and our executive coaching and team leadership services at Swim Against the Current, visit swim-against.com. And if you liked this podcast, help others who could use the support find it by giving us a rating. Until next time, life is short. Stay happy.